Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very interesting event that we are holding here at the Global Policy Institute in cooperation with the Bay Atlantic University. My name is Paolo von Schirach, and I am the president of the Global Policy Institute, a research outfit affiliated with Bay Atlantic University. And I'm also privileged to serve as a professor of political science and international relations at Bay Atlantic University. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us an expert on small and medium enterprises, which, as every economic textbook or any economist would say, it's the backbone, the foundation of a sound economy. You want to have SMEs, that they are flourishing, that they are thriving, that they're growing, etc. But of course, it's complicated. And of course, in every country, in every region, it's different. We have, even here in the United States, everybody should know, while people tend to associate America with big business, big tech, great companies, not everybody, I reveal you a secret, works at Facebook or Apple or Microsoft or for that matter, General Motors or General Electric or ExxonMobil or IBM. Most people work in small and medium enterprises, even here in the United States. But the same applies to Europe. Our guest today, we're fortunate to have him with us, visiting from Europe, but with a kind of a multifaceted background, as we understand, will explain to us how things work on the other side of the Atlantic and probably more. So why don't I just introduce him? His name is Oscar. Oscar, can you please tell us more about yourself, and then you can dive in directly into your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Oscar Sivi. I work for the Université Catholique de l'Ouest, that is a private university in France. I'm an assistant professor, and actually I'm pursuing a PhD in the Université Côte d'Azur. So the work that I'm going to present today is based in my PhD research, and that is basically interested in understanding how SMEs they manage the sustainable context that we are facing in Europe. Because sustainability is a constraint that we are following, a contextual situation that is pushing SMEs to follow different strategies. So, and this is new. So that's why I'm interested in this.
Absolutely. Let me just one quick clarification so that everybody understands. We know that Europe, more so than the United States, and certainly, with this new administration, things have changed substantially. There was a big impetus towards a green economy, right? And that, I suppose, that's what you mean, not only by sustainability. Going green tech, renewable energy, phasing out carbon dependence, which means less consumption of coal or gas or petroleum products and what have you. It seems that now things have changed a bit. Maybe you want to explain that to us. In other words, my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that emphasis has been, I wouldn't say eliminated, that would be too much, but now a bit downplayed. And we see that in Europe, people are saying, yes, we're going to get to the green world someday, but not today, not tomorrow. It's going to be a while because things are very expensive. And we have the case of Germany that invested billions and billions of dollars in green electricity production, and the result, they have the highest electricity rates in the industrialized world. Yeah. So it doesn't really work that well. So, but that said, please explain to us what it means, even in this maybe somewhat modified context, to talk about sustainable businesses, and concretely, what sort of restrictions or guidelines does that impose on anybody who wants to start a small company?
Yeah. So if we share a little bit the presentation, I will introduce a little bit the context. So we can go to the beginning. Yeah. So basically, we need to start by sustainability. That is one major challenge today, considering what we call the international field, international management, and it's required for, let's say, answers. Okay? Many academics, but also political, they are asking for solutions because we are living what we call a triple planetary crisis. Okay? So this climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution situation is pushing the context, the business context, to try to find solutions. And this was the case until not so far. Okay, because what you are saying is true. The situation is changing in the somewhat in the last months. We still don't have a particular, let's say, deficiency, but there are people that is asking for modifications to what we established. Everything started with the important report, okay, in 1987. That is what brings sustainable development came to the table. Sustainable development means that we need to find solutions that they take in consideration the future generations and meet the present needs without compromising the future. Okay, that is a big challenge because it needs what we call in some way a paradox of efficiency and efficacy. That is answering quickly, but doing it in the
cost-effective way.
Cost-effective, exactly. So for this, in 2015, the United Nations, they proposed what they call the 2030 SDG agenda. Okay, and based on that, Europe they define a rule, okay, that we call the EU Green Deal. Okay. However, before that, why they did this decision? I would like to just make a short comment because before that there was, you see, so many abbreviations of what it means to do sustainable businesses. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So are we sharing the? Yeah.
Yeah, I just shared.
Oh, okay.
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 Carry on.
So all these large abbreviations that you see here, that is mainly based in voluntary engagement, okay, brings to, in some way, a confusion, okay, between what was required, what was not required, okay. In terms also of efficiency, many people tend to think that ESG, CSR, all these things that tend to be greenwash. Then big corporations, big firms, they misclaim a lot of what they were doing, sending wrong messages to consumers and to communities just for economic reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to explain to the uninitiated, maybe you want to say more about what I need. Is kind of it's a kind of a terminology of the insiders. What do you mean by greenwash?
Okay, greenwashing means that the people might be sending or exaggerating in some way things that they are with a green purpose. It means they have like the purpose of finding a solution for a green problem, one of the green challenges that we mentioned a few minutes ago. But at the end of the day, it's just blah, 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 blah. So there is no too much in fact done because there is no particular indicator of efficiency that was looked as the SDGs proposed. So any initiative can be considered green in the past, but not necessarily you don't need to accomplish in reality something.
Maybe you remember, just if I may interject, a few years ago, or now several years ago, British Petroleum was reborn as Beyond Petroleum, right?
Exactly.
It was not petroleum anymore. It was and the logo, or not the logo, whatever they were using for marketing, was just a nice flower and looked like a sun, a flower, a daisy. And it says, oh, we are an energy company. Yeah, we also do carbon, but hey, we're doing this, or we're doing that, etc. Then we had the enormous explosion of the platform in the Gulf of Mexico, which caused the worst environmental disaster in world history. I don't know what, which destroyed the company and almost killed it. And the whole Beyond Petroleum thing was kindly, abandoned. But that was greenwashed as greenwash goes.
Yeah, and in fact, today with ESGs, because ESGs are in some way an
Again, please
indicator.
spell out what ESG is. What does
environmental, social, and governance aspects of firms. These are like aspects that big firms, big corporations are taking in consideration to satisfy shareholders, okay, and some stakeholders, okay. And in that sense, there is a melting pot of initiative. There is no clear guidance. Are we green? Are we social? What are we exactly doing? So we can use and choose based on those possibilities, whatever suits the best for us. And this is probably part of what the BP was doing. They were trying to take initiatives that for them they suit the best at that time.
But if we thank you for laying the picture here. So given this landscape and this ecosystem of rules and mandates and must have this, you can't do that. When it comes to a small company or somebody who wants to start a small company, how much does all this affect their strategies and decision-making process?
Until recent years was not to push into much. Okay, that's where I come in with the EU taxonomy, what we call the classification that they follow. Okay, based on the Green Deal, they are pushing for the adoption. Okay, of clear rules. Okay, the European Union is like a laboratory in this sense. They are establishing a clear language. Okay, that corporations they need to follow to show that they are in reality making improvements in the situation in terms of environmental aspects. Okay, so there is no more blah blah. They need to prove in a rational way.
So these are mandates.
These are mandates that
must do.
Yeah, we must do. We must adopt actions to decrease or to satisfy what we call the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. In some way, they need to follow actions internally, practices that might solve environmental issues, okay? and decrease the negative impact of their activities.
And I assume this must be verifiable. So if a company makes a claim, that somebody can look it over and say, really? Not really. We don't see that. You're making false statements here, or at least incorrect statements. Does that happen?
Yeah, there is even a big platform that I'm going to show you some pictures. If this work, it doesn't work. Sorry. Here we call this the sustainable reporting. Okay, the taxonomy compass. This is available. Okay, so today to be classified as sustainable and to be classified, they need to answer to 5 levels. As you see here, they have 7 levels, okay, of climate mitigation, climate adaptation, water use, circular economy, pollution prevention, biodiversity, etc., etc. So any firm that wants to claim that they are doing something, they need to do it in 4 categories at least, okay, in 4 of these levels. Okay, so it's like a clear goal that they are setting. The European Union was setting this clear goal in terms of initially environmental aspects, but then in 2026 it will start with other levels that will be more social. Okay? So they are concentrating in environmental issues. Okay?
Let me ask you a simple question again. If we're talking about people who want to start a business, how much a disincentive is all this for somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, it needs a bit of startup capital, and they want to do something, whatever that something is, and they have to say, oh boy, I have to do this, and I've got to do that, and I've got to write a report, I imagine, to show that there's compliance, and there will be this. Isn't that a bit suffocating?
Yeah, so it can be overwhelming in some way
especially for a small company.
For small companies, and this is my topic, because you know that small companies, they lack of resources, they lack of experience, they lack of knowledge. So for them, it's hard, all this. But at some point, they also have some assets, some many opportunities, because they are more flexible, okay, than big firms. We know that SMEs, they tend to be more entrepreneurial and some kind of innovative. So they can change processes, they can change business models in a more easier way, sorry, than big firms. So what has changed this context for them? What is changing is that we need to have what we call a 3-level green scope. Okay, it means this taxonomy is represented by what we call the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Okay, that require transparency. Okay, in public firms and private corporations, pushing to engage all kinds of stakeholders. Okay, and in this sense, today there is no obligation for SMEs to follow this type of taxonomy or to follow this directive of transparency. However, except in SMEs that are public, because we have SMEs that are public based on the side that we have big SMEs in Europe that they are public and they are following this type
public
of.
Public means they issue stocks.
Yeah,
that's what you mean.
Exactly.
Okay.
And but if they are private and they are considered SMEs in the classification, they don't have this exigency. However, big firms, big groups, like for example, retailers, big distribution retailers, like the case of Carrefour Group or Lidl in Europe or Aldi in Europe, these are big players. They need to engage more and more their suppliers. Okay, and they also need to engage all the stakeholders around them. Okay, this is what we call the scope levels. Okay, so initially you start engaging your firm initially, the people, your salary, your employees, the people working for management, and little by little you will be engaging other levels of stakeholders around the firm. So this is what is changing now today in Europe, and this is why in recent years we have been seeing that many SMEs, they have been trying to figure how to do it, because at the end of the day, it is money. The green taxonomy, the Green Deal, what they are doing is they are not punishing firms. They are just in some way giving a reward, okay? Rewarding firms that are good students in terms of green practices.
And reward comes in what forms?
They are financing, okay, in terms of credits. They have loans, they have subventions. And when we are talking about credits, we are talking about preferential rates, okay, of interest rates that
soft
loans that they can access just by proving that they are following clear.
So they're rewarded with a loan at 3% instead of 5%, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Okay, we understand.
So,
but I know it's hard to give an assessment, particularly as you were saying that these rules are being finalized now, right? Yeah. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
But the question is more broadly, if you can help us understand, because, not to be honest with you, especially here on this side of the Atlantic, people have a rather fuzzy idea of the European economy. And I have to say prejudice, precedes reality. And the notion that Europe is kind of sleepy place, nothing much happens, that there is no innovation, that people, take 2-hour lunches, and they take 2 months vacation in the summer, and then they retire when they're 55, and nothing much, and so it is a slow, kind of a quiescent economies with no dynamism, no incentive. Okay, I'm giving you a caricature, okay?
Yeah.
Deliberately so. Deliberately so. But tell us the truth. Tell us, and of course Europe is varied. Ireland is not, Slovenia and or Portugal. Give us a sense of what's going on, and maybe you can also make a reference, if you can, to the Draghi report about competitiveness in Europe. So, if one says, oh, they're already slow moving and this and that, plus you add all this compliance obligations, etc. Well, that's a kiss of death. Nothing will happen because people won't do these things because it's so even though, as you pointed out, there are financial carrots to say, if I do this, I get that. Oh, that may be nice. How do you, and I know it's difficult to provide a general perception to everybody of what is Europe, but do you see that first of all, that this picture that most people in America have, which I realize is a caricature, is wrong. And how wrong is it? And tell us, the dynamic sectors where also there would be entrepreneurs who want to start an SME or who have an SME today and want to grow it, etc. Where, I mean, it could be an issue of regions or sectors or both. What's your take? You coming from France?
It's contextual, in fact. What you are saying is true. There is a big difference between nations. I will show you just a short graphic here, because what we are doing is in fact, in Europe, what they are trying to do is they are trying to move firms from linear economies to circular economy, okay, practices. And in this sense, what it's important to say, because this is included in the European Green Deal, okay? So they are trying to push firms to try to use raw materials that are recycled, to reduce consumption, to remanufacturing, to try to do many things, to source ethically, to reuse products, to try to enlarge, repair products. So there is a large number of activities that might be interesting today in Europe. And this is just to answer to your question. We see that some professions that used to be disappear in the past, for example, shoe repairing. In Europe, we didn't have that anymore. Okay, this is something that we still see in countries like in South America, in regions like India, or probably some part of Asia. People still repair their shoes. In Europe, it's not the case.
And buy new ones.
Yeah, it's just there is a little bit scratch it, okay, drop it and buy new one. So this type of things, we are seeing a new change, okay, because we see how firms, and I'm gonna see some examples in a few minutes. Some firms that they are trying to include these activities into their business model, instead of just concentrating in being very specialized, in being very strategically oriented to one action. They will be covering different activities. Even small firms, they do that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
so
my
circular economy means reusing things.
It's reusing,
putting them in practical, economically viable utility.
Not only reusing, it's like giving an extension of life to the product. Okay, the principle is to try to reduce waste. Okay, basically waste in all sense. So we need to try to see waste in a different way. I have a short image that I like a lot, and I'm coming back to this. I'm going to show it here. Here, I like a lot this picture. Okay? I don't know if you know the film Back to the Future. It's a very popular film here in the US, and we see that in the Back to the Future 2, the doc is coming with his car for the future, and he's bringing this engine that is working based on beer and banana peels and things like that. So the idea is basically that it's trying to try to see that nothing is lost, nothing is a waste. Everything can be simply transformed and be used and useful. So try to bring value into things that we consider today waste, garbage. Okay. So the idea is moving, closing, slowing, and probably tightening the resource loop. That is important because in some way, what the European Union is doing, in some ways, is they are trying to be resource efficient. Okay, that is part of that concept of sustainable development. Okay.
Let me ask you again. I'm sorry. This is what are the opportunities now for somebody who wants to start a small business, considering this now, I wouldn't say conflicting, but maybe a little confusing now guidelines, because before it was clear, we go green. That's it. That's where we're going. We're going to phase out carbon, in fact, within specific time frames. Well, now those time frames are not so fixed. They're a little orientations. And yeah, green is great, but hey, maybe we still need not green. So if I want to be in the energy supply business in Europe, where do I go? Which orientation do I get? I suppose if you want to go green, you still have those incentives, right? Maybe.
Once again, it's contextual.
It
It
depends.
depends on the context, because we have some studies that prove that the SMEs in Spain, for example, they should went global very quickly, because the situation in Spain changed in terms of subventions, in terms of subsidies, and they were forced in some way to survive, to go abroad.
Because there wasn't enough. Okay.
So once again, as you said, it's contextual, because you have small markets. You cannot compare Slovenia in terms of population, in terms of business economy, to France in terms of size of population, market size, and potential.
But let me ask you sort of an ancillary question, because people also are a little confused here. Because when people refers to Europe, obviously we talk about the European Union.
Yeah.
I suppose most Americans don't quite understand what that is. And I myself, I mean, I have difficulties at times understanding it, even though I was born there, and I try to keep abreast of what's going on. So the European Union is not a country, right? But it is supposedly an integrated market. It's a free trade area, right?
Yeah.
With common rules about all kinds of things and norms that everybody has to adopt, because they are fixed by Brussels, and everybody has to follow them.
Yeah.
And yet one keeps hearing about all these obstacles. This is anecdotal, that are posed by the Brussels bureaucracy, that are not, oh, this is open, this is, no, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. In order to do this, you've got to do this, and that before, which are stifling, and therefore, in a sense, going against the declared objective of creating a seamless market. So in principle, if my firm is in Slovenia, I should be able to do business in Stockholm as well as in Lisbon. No problem. It's one market.
Yes.
In reality, not so much.
It's not so much, because the rules internal to each country are different in terms of tax payment, in terms of legal rules. But there are no the same fundamentals, the same principles in terms of legal aspects in each country.
How come? After all these years?
I compare it in a very easy way. In the United States, in terms of you have different, let's say, states, and you have a federal rule here. You have something that is common to all the states, and you have different laws that might be affecting some states and not necessarily another one. So you need to go to a federal site to see how can you bring it in a more general way to the country. But I think in some way is that, because what is in fact the European Union, and I'm not a specialist about that, is that the European Union it represents a little bit what President Trump is trying to do against is tariff. Okay, in the European Union we don't have tariff. Okay? We don't have any particular extra tax. If I send my product from France
tariff, but not
to Spain, there is no tariff. There is no particular paperwork to commercialize the product over there. I can send an invoice, and that's it. There is no custom clearance process. So it's quite easy. In the same way, people can move in Europe from Spain to
Greece.
We don't need visas. We don't need nothing. There is an open area of transit. Okay, transit of people and goods. However,
capital and labor.
Capital and labor. However, if you want to work specifically in Spain, the rules of working in Spain are not the same like working in France. Okay, the social system change, the institutions change. It's a different system. I don't know exactly if it's the same thing here in the US, but
not really, not so. There are differences, but not so remarkable.
So remarkable. here we have, in some way, and this is what probably might be the challenge, because they have their own languages, their own cultures, and they have also their own guidelines that they want to follow. Okay, the policies that each country is trying to follow to protect in some way their own interests. Even when they have a common interest that is Europe, it's important to say that each country has his own interest. Okay, and in terms of sustainability, that is the subject today. Of course, that we have different speeds. We have countries that are adopting sustainability in a faster way than others. Okay, and this is what I'm trying to understand, okay? Because I'm interested in international trade, international business, in that internationalization context, okay, of SMEs, okay? SMEs that are
So,
Europe.
based on your research and your studies, what would you say today and tomorrow would be the most promising sector for a would-be entrepreneur to start an SME that is compliant with the sustainability mandates or at least guidelines? So you would say, oh, this looks really promising. You want to be there because in this space you have it, things are going to go well. Whereas here, not so much. Well, if you have to make and again, I fully realize that it doesn't apply to everybody at the same time, given the differentiation that you explained just now. What would you say? So sustainability, of course, is great, but and everybody wants to be, I suppose, people do say, oh, I don't really couldn't care less about the environment. In fact, I want to pollute because I love it. Nobody would say that. Everybody would say, oh, yeah, of course. But how much does it cost me? What obligations does this cause? How much of my budget do I have to put into all these things? And yes, I get the incentives. I mean, taking into account all that, what would you say are the most promising sector? Is it about product recycling or about, I don't know, making buildings more energy efficient? I'm just guessing now. What do you think based on your research?
In the slide that you have in front of you, you have some what we call unicorns in France. Okay, back market is one unicorn. Neolith that we don't see too much downstairs is another unicorn. Too Good To Go can be considering ways to go to be a unicorn. Vinted it's a big firm also. All these companies, they are targeting sustainable issues. Okay, they are solving problems, real problems related to sustainability. Okay, back market, what they do. I'm going to jump a little bit into their strategies because I think it's what people want to see. Sorry, it doesn't work there.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Now it's working.
Okay. So just jumping very quickly into here we have okay. Vinted is a company that what they try to do is they try to increase the second-hand trade, okay, of products. Okay, they are trying to reduce the production of new products, and they try to encourage consumers to buy second-hand products, and they are doing wonderful. This company is growing very fast in Europe. This company is supporting particular aspects of, as we see here, particular tons of CO2 emissions reduction in terms of comparing to buying a product that is new. So they are doing wonderful. And
so they meet the guidelines.
They meet guidelines. They
because
are
their carbon footprint is much lower.
They support carbon footprint. They support the reuse of resources in a more efficient way, so on. So they bring all this into the table, and what they do is they do what entrepreneurs do generally. They are solving problems, society problems. Today in Europe, at least, I don't know, in the US, these are particular issues. People is caring about, even consumers, because I'm pretty sure that we might have consumers like that here in the US, but in Europe, consumers, they are caring about because traditionally the second hand is not bad thing. So people they support that type of practices, behavior in the society. Okay.
For instance, what would be the sectors? I mean, when you say second-hand goods, it could be anything. It could be clothing. it could be apparel, it could be, sorry, appliances. I mean, what is it that we're talking about?
I'm talking about the principles of circular economy, okay? But when we are talking about the principles of circular economy, might even be larger than that, because we have today new economies that are coming into the table. We are talking about sharing economy, okay? People that are commercializing and sharing goods, okay? Sharing assets, okay? Sharing transportation, sharing products. You have big platforms that they are like communities in where people are going to pay for borrowing the, I don't know, the computer of someone, the telephone of someone, something that is not used, because we know that people used to buy many things because they were cheap, but they don't use it too much. So far today we are seeing a change into the consumer, that they are just sharing assets, sharing goods. Then we have functionality. Okay, I will be just paying for an asset for the use that I have. We see this a lot in Europe. We see I mean, here in the US, even with the small bikes that you rent.
You rent. Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly the same in Europe. You see more and more this type of businesses. People that is bringing solutions so we can hire something for the use. So all these things are reducing buying. That is, at the end, is reducing the resources that we are consuming from the planet. That we are reducing the pollution, the waste that we are generating, increasing those resources. So at the end of the day, this is, as you see, we are in some way targeting SDGs, and this is, for me, in some way, this is what all these unicorns are doing. Here you see a second example. You have Back Market. Back Market is a company that also is selling electronics, electronics that they refurnish. Okay? They repair. They will be buying your iPhone 12, your iPhone 10. They will be repaired and they will sell it. So we have an economy of second-hand products that in the past, many people they left those iPhones in the I don't know, in the office, in some place lost. Today we see that these products they have a value, and we are bringing value into things that we consider waste. Okay, so Back Market is a second example. Here you see they are really engaged with the climate change issues, because as you see, this is a publicity that a picture I took from him, when they say one picture was shot with the iPhone S and the second one was shot with iPhone 13 Pro. As you see, the same place. What are the consequences of climate change? So what they are saying with this message is buy secondhand. Buy secondhand, because secondhand, not necessarily buying new stuff can be good for the planet. So they are trying also to, in some way, to educate consumers and to bring solutions to particular issues. A third example, and I will, sure. I will with this, I will probably end in terms of entrepreneurs, SMEs. Veja is a company that I like a lot. Okay, Veja this is a shoe manufacturer. Okay, they produce shoes in Brazil. But why I like this example, because probably you don't. Veja is a Brazilian word.
Brazilian.
Yeah.
So not Europe.
Yeah, okay. But the company is French.
It's French, but they produce it.
They produce in Brazil.
In Brazil.
But, yeah. And what was the target of? Because many people don't understand. Okay, why they produce? Because it's what they're saying here in the red square. This is the critic that someone from France is doing, because once again, sustainability might be ambiguous, okay, for some people, and what you are saying is not easy sometimes to understand how to target particular sustainability challenges. Here, Mr. Guinchard, he said he's criticizing Veja because he said they are not French. Okay, so we cannot consider that something that is ethical and sustainable can be produced 10,000 kilometers from France. We need to buy more local. Okay, and what probably he doesn't know, because if you follow the discussion later, you see that many people support and defend Veja, because what they are doing is they are trying to solve the Amazon, to save the Amazon. Because today what they are bringing an economy into the Amazon area. Okay, they are creating an economy in terms of we call that natural latex. Okay, to produce the e-soles of the shoes, to manufacture products, to bring an economy to stop making people that is poor in those areas to sell the forest and to allow deforestation. So they are bringing an economy that in some way is finding a solution to deforestation. So you see, people doesn't understand that. They think that buying something that is produced 10,000 kilometers might be not ecological, but they are forgetting that that's a big issue with deforestation too. So all these entrepreneurs, they are finding solutions to particular issues that are in some way facing society today. Okay. One last example, and this is my own university. Okay.
Go ahead.
Because everyone can follow plans, can follow guidelines. Okay. Here we see that we have a clear action plan that we are trying to be energy efficient. We are trying to reduce how we do it. Because the previous examples that I show you, they create solutions in terms of product services that target that. But you also have a compliance way on doing it, okay? That might be trying to improve your operation. This is exactly what many SMEs are trying to do. They are trying to bring compliance into being green, to be more efficiently ecological, okay? In terms of how I produce things, how I do things. Here, my university, we not just they support the sharing, okay, of transportation, because they pay for me, for example, the public transportation. They support in some way financially if I do that, if I buy a card to use public transportation. But they also put to us in disposition bikes, okay, bikes that we can use for short trips. If we want to go to 5-6 kilometers, we can just borrow. We have what we call that, a parking of bikes that we can just borrow. They are facilitating the energy use, doing a lot of restoring the isolation of the buildings to try to consume less energy. So these are aspects that many firms are trying to follow today.
Hmm. That's very interesting. Of course, clearly now, especially just occurred to me, even here in the U.S., being green, it's also in some areas at least being smart, because if you invest in upgrades in your facilities that reduce the consumption of energy, it means you save money.
Yeah.
In the end, this pays for itself, and you save money. Yeah. So that, in a budgetary sense, it's not just not being green, you're also being intelligent. You're doing something that's good for business. But let me ask you this. First of all, thank you. This is a very interesting illustration of what's going on in Europe. My question, there are several questions. The first one that comes to mind is all this circular economy, recycling, repurposing, etc. I'm sure that there are some areas in which this is made possible by the introduction of new technologies.
Yeah.
But would you say that overall, these focus on the circular economy and being essentially less wasteful is also an innovation driver? Is that really something? Okay, Europe, oh boy, look at the Europeans, what they're doing. They are miles ahead of China or Japan or America for that matter, because they've introduced this fancy new technologies that allow to be cost effective and recycle this. And does that exist?
Yeah.
In your experience, in your study, in your research? In other words, is this a sector? Can this become a cutting edge sector that makes Europe, a leader in certain technologies of the future?
Yeah.
Any particular examples that you can think of? Or?
Yeah, I can just name. I have one in the list of companies that I just mentioned here. Here you have, for example, LOD Center International. It's a small firm. Okay, they develop a clean water system. Okay, that is applied by many food manufacturers today. Okay, they cooperate a lot with big names in the food industry, particularly in the dairy industry. Okay, and what they do is they create a system that is like a washing system. Okay, I don't know if you know a little bit about food industry. Okay,
A little, yeah.
a little bit. So in the food industry,
explain it to everybody.
when we produce, for example, a batch of I don't know, of yogurt. Okay, we need to, in some way, when we want to produce a second batch of another taste, another flavor, okay, we need to wash it. Okay, and this product, this washing water, in the past, it passed through some filtering process, but at the end, it was dropped into some river, into some lake.
It became waste.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, you always have a residual product in the environment. Okay? So all of these, they bring a solution, thinking in that, in where they imagine a system that is infinite.
Constant recycling.
Constant
of the same water.
So they take the water, they, with I don't know exactly how the product, chemical they're using, and the exact, because there is a lot of chemistry on that. Okay, and so they take that product, and through UVs, rayons, and things like that, they rebuild, they reestablish the properties of the how to say, of the cleaning product. Okay,
Okay.
and they use it, and they just put it, and they reuse it, and they just put it, and
infinity
in a closed loop. What we call that.
So you basically, you don't have to throw that wastewater away at some point and get new water, and so it's a water conservation.
It's a water conservation, and you can also keep in some way the cleaning product, the cleaning chemical is inside the facility, so you are reducing the consumption of that chemical. Okay?
It's reused.
It's reused because they reestablish the properties of the product. So this is a clear technology that is not only targeting SDGs directly, but it's also cost efficient. It's what you are saying. So today, these constraints, this new scenario that we are living in Europe is pushing companies to find solutions, to innovate a lot.
Let me ask you, I'm really curious about this because also in my experience working in emerging countries, of course, one of the most significant challenges in India, in Africa, elsewhere is water. There's never enough water, and especially clean water. And getting access to it is complicated. Sometimes it can be a cause of conflict. Is this company operating now just in one particular part of Europe or elsewhere? Are they expanding internationally?
They're expanding internationally. That's why I like.
Where are they based?
They are in France.
They are French.
They are French, but they have operations here in the US.
And so they have their own proprietary patented technologies and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's really okay. That I buy very much.
The second option, or just down, if you see Neolith, is another technology that's also super interesting. They develop a product that is fossilizing trash. You know, all the trash that we cannot recycle, that is going to the dump. Okay, that we burn and we go to the dump, and at some point, it's creating CO2 emissions. It's polluting also the soil and all that. Neolith, they design a system where they took all this trash and they accelerate the fossilization process.
So it's frozen in a sense. It's like a frozen. It stays. It doesn't have emissions. Doesn't have anything.
Nothing. They produce stones from trash. Stones that they can be used later in construction.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I buy that too. More?
Somebody,
Yes, so question, what would you say about housing? Because housing is, affordable housing is a huge thing.
Yeah.
So who do you know who is doing that? And how do you get around the politics? Because I felt like in America, you know, you had the dynasties who have built great wealth off of these old models that are kind of phasing away. So outside of 3D printing a home, what are some other ways that housing is becoming refurbished?
So affordable housing, essentially, which is
probably you have a little bit about that here. I don't have clear examples here, but there are some firms, particularly in France, that they are trying to reuse containers. Okay, they buy second-hand containers, and they use those containers. They isolate those containers, and there is even an entrepreneur that recently he launched a technology that is the container is as it's light, it can move. So they move the container through the year to look for the sunlight. Okay, so you can decrease the energy needs of the house because the container is moving. So it's looking for the light. It's looking for the energy that is coming from the sun. That is clear energy, cheap energy. So these are the type of solutions that we are seeing today in Europe, and that are mainly a consequence of the context that we are facing.
Here we have tiny houses.
Can be.
But so let me move. We're getting
Close
to the end of
yeah.
our time. But let me ask you again more about First of all, thank you. These are very interesting examples of being, how can I say, environmentally conscious and innovative at the same time, and adding value. It seems to me, because again, if you fossilize trash and you make bricks for construction, well, that's great. So instead of being waste, it becomes an input for an industry. And the water sounds really beautiful. And I'm sure there are others. But if you are looking at the global race for regions of the world, or trading blocks that want to be innovation leaders, now everybody is saying, oh, the future of technology, what is it going to be? Another dimension of energy? Is it going to be green hydrogen, small nuclear reactors? Or no, we're going to go, the new types of forms of communication. Or, of course, everybody talks artificial intelligence, which requires massive amounts of investment, particularly, I know maybe China may have changed the parameters with their own innovation, which seems to be low cost and low energy consumption. But just to give a practical example, here in the United States, all the tech companies are doing, or are thinking about doing, having major direct investment in electricity production because of the projected cost of data centers, particularly for artificial intelligence. We are talking about an exponent, not just the electricity consumption in the US. Well, because of that, will go up, 10, 20, 30%. We're talking 300%, 400%, 500%, which is almost an impossibility. We are already the largest producer of energy in the world and the largest per capita consumer. And we're talking about adding to supply in an exorbitant fashion in order to maintain a leading position in artificial intelligence. China is doing its own thing, in different ways. They have other types of incentives. What about Europe? Where do you see Europe, and in particular, the possible contribution? Because here, usually, you're talking about massive amounts of startup capital. Is there a space for SMEs to say, okay, I want to participate here? Is that a dream, or is that possible? In other words, in the cutting edge technologies of the future, and I'm not saying these are not. These are cutting edge. I would fully buy that. But other areas where typically everybody says, oh, these are the areas of who will dominate the space. Artificial intelligence, energy, this is what's going to be. Logistics, transport. In the US, for whatever it's worth, they're really seriously working about what would be how can I say it? The grandchild of the Concorde. Okay, we want to go supersonic civilian transport. Of course, the Concorde was a French idea, French-British, which of course had to be jettisoned because it wasn't cost effective. Is Airbus in Europe thinking about the new Concorde, or the grandson or great grandson of the Concorde, to be on the leading edge of supersonic civilian transportation, which definitely will change the world, or not. And again, we're not talking SMEs here, but in terms of areas of cutting edge technology, where do you see Europe, and in particular SMEs, if they can have a space at all?
I think that Europe, they are clear in the guidance that they have been following. And if you see the type of innovations that the Airbus bring into the market, that as a consequence create a lot of disruption for Boeing, a lot of disruption that incentivize Boeing to follow ethical actions, because everything that happened, all the scandals that we have been seeing of Boeing in terms of the system that was not announced, about how we need to, they didn't need any particular training of pilots, but just to
pretty sloppy management.
Very sloppy management situation, and non-ethical in some way. So I think that just to answer, as a cutting-edge innovation, Airbus, they took the decision of decreasing the consumption of fossil fuel in their airplanes, okay? Trying to reduce in some way the cost of a travel in terms of energy consumption. They were not looking for being the faster, they were looking for being the cheaper in terms of use of energy. And I think that this is also based on the countries that we are living, that is challenging us to use in a more efficient way energy, to reduce the cost, the consumption of energy. And coming back to your example of AI, I think that in Europe, what we are looking is for more sustainable AI. So what I read is they are trying to look for solutions that are not energy consuming and massive energy. Okay, they are trying to look for solutions that might be probably not as top as what is doing today cloud or OpenAI, but they will be in some way more energy efficient than what they are. This is what I read so far. Okay. So, and I think once again is a direction that many big players are following, is try to, because energy, we know that fossil energy cannot be forever in some way. So we need to try new solutions. To finish my idea in terms of energy, I think that there is a lot of place for people that might be trying to produce new source of energy, renewable energy based on waste. Then we see some people that are trying to do biodiesels, fuels that are produced based on oil from restaurants.
But
I think that there is a place for that in future.
Do you think that would have scalability in terms of mass adoption to say, okay, we're not going to do this, but this will replace that, or will just be a niche player where you can
be an app for the energy market? As if we study a little bit the energy consumption, we never decrease the consumption. Okay, we just add new consumption, new ways of consuming energy. So far, the fossil energies, they have been decreasing, all of them. Renewables are increasing.
We're not
we are not substituting nothing so far.
Understood.
At some point, we should replace some of those fossil fuels.
But I'm sorry, we're coming to the end of the time allocated for us. But let me just ask you, if you could, to summarize, first of all, this very interesting presentation about these players in Europe. But would you say that, given this ecosystem that SMEs have to operate in Europe, and the guidelines, which were constraints and incentives, as you explained to us, that all that together gives Europe as a whole some kind of an edge, some kind of an advantage to position itself at the forefront of innovation on a global scale? I mean, do you think, again, I go back to the Draghi report, which was very, hey, we're going to miss the bus here. You know, because look at America, they're doing this and that. Look at China, they're doing this and that. And where are we Europeans? You know, maybe it was too much. So, do you think, based on your research and your knowledge of this dynamics affecting the SME sector, that this is promising for an innovative, cost-effective, and also environmentally friendly Europe that will be at the cutting edge of whatever will be necessary 10, 20 years from now, or something is missing? What's your, I know it's a pretty big generalization,
yeah.
Forgive me, but let's see what you can tell us.
The only thing that I can tell you, just to conclude, is that being an entrepreneur in Europe is not easy. And innovation, depending on what type of innovation are you doing, you might be backup or support in a large way by governments, and depending on which context are you based, because it's not the same, once again, launching a new idea in Europe than launching a new idea in Germany or France, where you have capital and you have business angels, you have all these entrepreneurial ecosystems that are pushing for new innovation. But at the same time, we cannot lie. As you said, the Draghi report is showing that innovation, we need to change things if we want to be leaders in terms of cutting edge innovation in future. And I think it's something that they realize, because we see that there is a lot of support in universities to research. We need to bring research to Europe, because unfortunately, the US so far, they have been pumping the research from Europe.
Not anymore, it looks like, but
we'll probably we will have some kind of help that will bring research into Europe in short term. But I think that the challenge is on the research and how we can incentivize more research in universities, private institutions that might be incentivizing those innovations that we see here. Some examples that we need more.
Okay. Well, really, thank you for this broad but very instructive understanding of helping us understand this very complicated environment. Of course, Europe is complicated to begin with, but then we have to add this this critical sector of SMEs, and hopefully this gives us some food for thought. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are at the end of our time. I want to thank everybody who is following us online, and this event will be online, available, for anybody who wants to watch it again. So on behalf of Bay Atlantic University and the Global Policy Institute, I thank everybody for their attention. I thank our guest for being with us and sharing his knowledge and expertise. Oscar, thank you.
Thank you, Paolo, for inviting me today.
And we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.